So we're sisters. I'm Kate.
I'm Liz. I'm the little sister. She's the big sister.
She's little, she's shorter, and she's younger. We've been writing together since we started writing together. We've always written separately, but we never ever finished anything. So that is our top tip. If anybody asks, like, what's your top tip for writing? Is finish the book, because we used to just like write the beginnings of things separately. And never finish anything. And then we wrote something we started writing in 2012, I guess, together.
Yeah, we started writing together, and then we got, well, I think it was our aunt, who said, you know, why don't you actually send it in to some authors?
We never thought we could ever, we never thought we could get published. But we wrote a book which didn't get any representation, but we enjoyed it and we kind of practiced on it. So then we wrote something which turned into our first book, which was The Witch's Kiss, which got us an agent. And this trilogy was published by HarperCollins, 2016 to 2018. And then we moved to Hotkey, and they published A Flow in the Swans and A Crown of Tanners. And The Crown of Tanners was one that came out at the beginning of this year in lockdown, yay! But you know. But Swans came out just before everything went pear-shaped.
So we had a book launch.
So we did get a book launch for Swans, which was really cool. And we've got other stuff which we're not allowed to talk about at the moment. In the pipeline.
Hope to be able to talk about it soon, because I really want to.
Yeah, in January.
Fingers crossed. I need to be the first to know. Just so I can prepare my emotions for whatever round will take me on next. So you write together, and I find that really interesting, because when I do creative things, I think I'd really struggle to share like a project with someone. So how do you two find that like writing together works? Do you both enjoy it? Is it frustrating sometimes?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture. So we like really similar things. We both love fantasy, which is why I've always thought we'd write fantasy.
We read a lot of the same things, same books. We shared the same books, had the same interests. We're both die-hard Star Trek fans.
Yeah.
We love fantasy. Terry Pratchett.
Tolkien. Neil Gaiman.
I like a bit more science fiction. I like Isaac Asimov and what's his face? The famous one. No, the famous one who wrote all the. No, the time traveling ones and. Oh God, my brain's just gone.
Yeah, and I just can never remember any names on it. And I like more weird stuff like Gormenghast. I really loved Gormenghast as a kid. I was completely in love with Fuchsia, you know, who dies. So
H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells, okay. We like writing. I mean, it's fun having a world that if you create a fantasy world, to share it with somebody else. Because if we never thought we'd get published, so it was really fun to have somebody else to this is really cool, and we could do this, and so we still really love that aspect of it. There's
it's really
bits where we fight about who we should kill, or
there's a lot of
I like to kill people more than she does.
I like to bring them back again. So we've both done it, because we've killed people and then we've managed to find a way to bring them back again, and sometimes not always. But Katharine writes a lot more of the kind of horrible, gruesome torture scenes and murders, and she really enjoys that. And I like to write more of the funny kind of dialogue and
banter.
Yeah, the banter and I think, I mean, when we do fall out, we have kind of a couple of times got a bit kind of handbags at dawn about things, and that's really where we go to our editor. And I think we've probably had 3 incidences where we've gone to our editor, and I think, is it 2 for 1 or 1 or 1?
I think it's 2 for. I don't know. I think it's probably 2 all at the moment. Actually, we've had 4 things. Yeah, and the editor's like decides who's right. So
like referees it.
No, it has been a referee situation. We don't write in the same place because Lizzie's really chatty.
Apparently.
Are you off? And I have
allegedly
complete silence. I can't even have any music on when I'm.
No, and I like to listen to music. I like to listen to 2 Steps from Hell.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think the good thing about it is that being a writer is a very solitary profession, and we can have a real laugh about certain things like killing off characters, you know, and can have quite a laugh about that.
Or we imagine what we write work on like fan fiction ideas for our own books, which sounds a bit sad, but it's actually quite fun because it can be really weird and out there and like
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun actually, and I think also when we get, as all writers do, we have some writer's block and we can't get past a particular point in the plot, and one of us will normally be able to find a way to move it on.
Yeah, so that's helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine being a writer would be a very like solitary profession.
Yeah,
there's lots of sitting on your own thinking. So
particularly she won't share a room with me. So.
But it seems to work for us. We haven't killed each other yet, so
Well, yeah. Well, there we go. It's working.
I think we both like to do different, as well as the writing together. I mean, Katharine's a big fan of historical fiction and quite nerdy, as you possibly could tell. And not from looking at you. That's not what I'm saying. Some of the stuff, like she got a real knickers in her twist about, what was it, about rabbits?
That was in the first book.
In the first book, so they didn't have rabbits.
Well, they did.
All the rabbits were introduced by then. Was like,
no, they were introduced by the Romans.
But Katharine was like, should there be rabbits? Is this? And I was like, no one cares. No one's going to think about the rabbits.
It was literally like one line where he's like, I'm going to hunt a rabbit or something.
She's like, this derails the entire story for me. Sometimes I'm a bit like, no. We had a thing in the duology, Crowns, about Katharine's very keen to get.
I like the architecture.
Yeah. So there was corridors, no corridor.
But English castles didn't have corridors. Stately homes didn't have corridors originally. All the rooms were opening all the rooms are like in a line. So the idea of a corridor with doors opening off it was a European thing, which wasn't introduced until later on. But we decided to ignore that aspect.
Nerdy geeky.
It worked better.
All right, who cares? None of our readers going to be still.
I wouldn't have noticed. That wouldn't have been something when I was reading that I'd be like,
I know.
So sometimes we
can't though. That's really interesting. So has it always been kind of like fantasy? Obviously you both enjoy fantasy. Is that always where you kind of wanted to go into with writing?
I think so.
When I first started messing around, I think I was in, I don't want to give away my age here, but in the noughties and reading a lot of Bridget Jones and women's fiction and just as it's called, was it called by then? And I just thought I like writing funny stuff, humorous stuff. And I thought maybe that's the direction I would go in. But our common ground is fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah, I wrote when I was a teenager. I wrote a lot of really dodgy Tolkien knockoff type poetry, which is never ever going to see the light of day.
Should have a really funny pen name as well.
No, I know, which you're not going to tell anybody. I tried to learn Elvish, that kind of stuff, so I was always really into the fantasy writing. But I don't know, I think if we write separately, we might do something different, potentially, which is, always a possibility.
That'd be interesting to see. I mean, I do love my fantasy. It's my preferred read every time. But I do find it really interesting when people kind of, especially authors, do different things. I find that really interesting because I think if it was me, I'm not a writer. I can't write to save my life. It would be abysmal if I even tried. I struggle with Instagram captions sometimes and making them make sense. So yeah, I always find it really interesting. When it comes to fantasy, what do you think your favourite bit about writing it is? For me, reading it, a lot of the time it's kind of like the world building magical side that I really enjoy to read. So it'd be interesting to know what your favourite bit about writing it is.
I think I'm very keen on I really like to I love the fantasy world and world building, but I really try very hard to make sure the characters interact with each other in a relatable way, so that their relationships aren't overly fantastical, if that makes sense. That they're kind of they have the when something amazing happens, they have the right kind of reaction to it. They don't go, oh okay. Because I remember that bit in the film version of oh gosh, what's it called? Beauty and the Beast, and Emma Watson's watching what's face change into a man finally after being the beast, and she's a bit like, oh, okay. I always thought it should be more like, what?
Yeah, maybe. No, I like the world building. So, and what I particularly enjoyed with the duology is, so the first trilogy we wrote was contemporary fantasy. So it's set mostly in the modern world, some bits of in Anglo-Saxon England. And we did some world building in there because obviously we had to create the magic system of the way the witches recorded that, developed the spells. They recorded the spells, a sort of historical aspect to how all of these spells have been learned and come together. And there was a conflicting magic system because there are some wizards who don't get on with the witches and how they work. But obviously with swans and talents, because it's completely a completely created world, we had a lot of fun there thinking about how would the government work, how would the religion work, how does the society set up,
industry, architecture.
So that was all really interesting. And the contrast even between, you learn a little bit about some of the other countries, and the contrast between even the countries in this imaginary world, which I guess because I love history as well, that chance to kind of draw on the actual history and put some of that into the fantasy world and think how would that work given they've got these extra abilities of this shape shifting and that kind of thing. Like in the sort of mansions of the nobility, the idea that because they're flying in, they wouldn't have the ground floor isn't the important entrance floor, it's up further up because they have the landing platforms. So the architecture reflects the fact that they've got this amazing ability to change their shape.
Yeah, I think that, and I think fantasy is escapism, and it's aspirational, and you can become, through your characters, kind of a superhero. You can fly, or you can use magic, or these things that in real life you would never have the opportunity to do. You can just create this fantasy world where you can achieve anything.
Yeah, I think that's why I love fantasy so much, because it is that kind of magical world where anything can kind of happen. And I think your characters are why I connected so well with this. I read this in one night, really late, when I should have been sleeping. But it is just incredible. Like, the characters and the world just like blew me away. I was so attached to the characters. I was riding the emotional roller coaster with them at all times. So with that in mind, how do you go about creating the characters that you do? Because especially in this, they blew me away. They were really relatable despite being magical creatures.
I think it's the first trilogy that we did was a sibling story, really. Ultimately, it wasn't there was a YA there was a YA kind of romance, but it was really about being siblings, because we wanted to write about that in our background. And I think it's similar in this book. It's what we wanted to explore most of our own backgrounds.
Yeah, so I think particularly Katharine, having lost her mum, because we lost our mum, that sense of and the sense that I think you get, particularly I guess when you're younger as well, this, if something bad happens, like somebody dying, you want to find out, you want somebody to blame almost, it's a very human reaction, and that's what drives her initially, that wanting this revenge, wanting to find out what happened, and that obviously then throws her into all of this difficulties, because it isn't straightforward as she thinks it's going to be when she first sets out from the citadel after her dad's died as well. And I guess also that sense of that in real life there are so many things you think you know somebody, and then you realise they're not what they are at all. So that idea of people having masks almost, and you think she thinks she knows somebody. I don't want to give too much away in case anybody hasn't read it, but And then, you know, it turns out to be in both books, there's, you know, she gradually becomes less trusting, but even in the second book, there's people, you know, it's just this sense of layers of personality, and the difficulty, how difficult it is to figure out what somebody's real motivation is, and whether you can really trust them completely, and whether they actually want the same thing as you, even if that's what they're saying. So
I kind of like the relationship with Lucy and Adrian as well, because it's not perfect, and I don't think either of them are perfect.
No.
He's definitely not perfect. He's right for her. So I was watching that new Netflix movie. I don't know if you've seen it, Love Hard. And she said,
Hard.
Yes, being the non-geeky sister who actually watches contemporary television. So Love Hard is a cross between like Love Actually and Die Hard. Well, not really, but certain themes from it. And she says at the end, I'll probably ruin the film for everybody if I say at the end, but it's about being what's perfect for you. And I think he isn't the kind of perfect kind of sort of YA hero. You know, he's not an Edward Cullen and kind of bronze, particularly. I mean, he is basically quite gorgeous, but he's also quite flawed, and she loves him, and despite those flaws, and because of them.
Yeah, and I think that idea. I mean, I think the idea that people aren't perfect is something we've explored in everything we've written so far. That you know, then her relationship with Aaron, who starts off really kind of such a pain in the bum, and she's like really prickly, but I actually love Aaron. I think he's my favourite character.
Yeah, I love Aaron.
And the way that friendship between them develops, and then was almost derailed in the middle of the second book, because of how he reacts to things.
This is another sibling theme going on, isn't there? And I think, you know, Aaron and Adrian, you know, they're family ultimately, aren't they?
Yeah, so that idea that you can get, you know, she starts off with, she thinks it's just her parents which she's lost, and then she ends up with this almost replacement family. And it's not very big, but it doesn't have to be big, you know. So she's got Letcher and Aaron there at the end, and that is enough for her almost.
That leads me into one of the book club questions, which is, if you could bring any character, we'll do it, any character from your books and any character from a wider range of books as well, to life, who would it be?
No, I think it's a really difficult one, actually.
And I have Aaron Defo, from the duology, from the trilogy. I don't know, I really like Mary and Leo. They're obviously our first literary babies.
Well, Leo was like our fantasy. We don't have a brother, so we wanted to write a brother. So Leo,
fantasy older brother.
Fantasy older brother. Like.
He's fantasy older brother. He's not the super annoying kind of like.
Yeah, real life older brother.
So he does have an element to that. But he's, I think, yeah, would love Leo. We'd like to do a spin-off. We would with Leo and also probably with Aaron. I think they're great characters, both of them. They have a bit of a similarity between them, the two of them, in some ways.
Yeah, I kind of like. I think Adrian is quite nerdy like me, so I'd probably like to bring. I think she'd be fun to hang out with.
Yeah, that's why I'm less inclined to bring her in, because she'd probably just keep correcting me and telling me I'm doing correct my English.
In terms of other books, I think that's such a hard one. I think I don't know. I might go for somebody from Jane Austen, because I just think her characters are so fabulous. You know, I love all her books. But maybe Mr. Tilney. I think he'd be fun. I don't know if you've read Northanger Abbey, but he's
no, I haven't.
It's great. That's really that's my favourite, actually.
He introduces her by being like, "Oh yeah, I know all about muslins because I, you know." So he's just a great character. So Mr. Tilney. If I was going for somebody from fantasy, I think maybe Dor from what's it called, Neverwhere, or the Marquis from Neverwhere. Actually, he's fabulous. I'd like to meet him.
I like Susan from the Terry Pratchett novels and the Discworld novels. That's
Death's granddaughter. Yeah.
She's awesome. She's very no nonsense, and she gets everything. She's a lot. She gets everything done, and I like her. She's a good character.
I think you're a bit like Susan. Get a lot done.
I'm not no nonsense there, am I? I'm always running around like a headless chicken. It's like but like this morning, going, where's my charger? Where's my laptop? So who else?
I wasn't the only one running around like that this morning then.
Captain Kirk, obviously, though, that's the lame, isn't it? I'd
rather be have Captain Picard.
Yeah. Well, Katharine, that was the one key difference. Can I embarrass you a bit more? That's the one key difference between us growing up, is we both loved Star Trek, and I was completely in love with William Shatner. She was completely in love with Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, well, Mr. Spock is like logical and smart, isn't he? Yeah, he's just got like this mega brain.
Whereas I was more into Captain Kirk rolling over things and going, "Oh, kung fu!"
They also wanted to know what would be, if you could visit any world in any book, what would it be?
Oh goodness, well, Middle Earth, obviously, because I think that would be awesome. Where else would I like to go? Yeah, and Ankh-Morpork.
I always liked the fairy kingdom in Iron King.
Yeah,
Prince Ash, and I think the elves would be interesting because they're not nice elves like in Lord of the Rings. Well, the elves are always a bit arsey, aren't they? But these are super arsey elves.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. And also Rebecca's World, children's book.
Yeah, that's probably a long outfit.
It is long outfit. I paid £25 to get a copy for my daughter on Amazon. That's kind of set off. That's a really neat children's book, Rebecca's World. Terry Nation, is that?
I think so.
And very tropical because it's like environmental. They sat on this planet where they basically destroyed all the trees, and all the ghosts are overwhelming the planet, and the only thing that keeps them away is the trees. They have such a nice bunch of characters, Grimsby and Kodak and all the rest of them, who look after her. I think that would be a really neat world to go to.
And maybe what's the one? The really, really famous one, Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah.
That one.
Which
you know
one?
What I mean. The one with the fairies.
The
Court of Thorns and Roses. Yeah. I mean, it'd be really dangerous. I'd probably die within like the first 5 minutes.
She'd probably fall off something.
I'd probably fall off something.
Or over something.
It's a beautifully drawn world. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think there's quite a few fantasy worlds that I'd love to visit, but I don't think I'd last long in any of them.
Yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't.
I would. I'd hide. I'd hide pancakes.
The idea of them's great, but realistically, I would, and it wouldn't be a cool ending either. I would literally trip over something or like
die in the first few pages.
yeah, I'd die in the first few pages. No one would remember that I was ever there. It would be that kind of scenario.
Yeah, no, same. I wouldn't, because I don't have any of the skills. I can't suddenly be like whip out my sword or.
That's the great thing about fantasy, isn't it? That you give yourself the skills. Yeah. It's like in the Matrix. You're like, oh no, kung fu.
Yeah, no, I could, if I got Matrix stuff, I could maybe spy.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's part of the reason I love fantasy though, because I can pretend that I'm a really badass like fighter.
Yeah.
Who can do witchcraft and all this kind of cool assassin stuff, but in reality I'm the clumsiest person alive.
I actually fell off a stage in front of a whole bunch of people once when I was at school, but when I was 17, so I was really embarrassed.
It was a good debate though. It was a very good debate. Then she fell off the stage.
Yeah. A good move. I fell off the side of a mountain. I've fallen over trees.
I used to go visit her university. I always had to sleep on the floor because she'd always fallen up. She specialises in falling upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm quite good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think I would be. Yeah, I'm not cool enough to be in a fantasy novel, sadly. So. That's why I like them.
We can dream about it though, so it's okay. We can pretend. Oh dear. I think that was all the questions I had written down.
Cool. Okay, great.
So I will, do you want to let us know where we can find you? And I will make sure to link it all. So like on Instagram or things.
Yeah, so we're mostly on Instagram. So I am at Katharine Corr Writes, and on Twitter I'm just at Katharine Corr.
I think I'm at Liz Corr Writes, both of them. And then we've got the website.
Which is thecorrsisters.com. So we put stuff about the books on there. We don't update it, like it's not like a blog, but we keep it up to date with what we've published and links to buy the books. So there will be news next year at some point. But obviously
we're on Instagram more than anything else.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I do need to prepare myself then. If the emotions are anything like in these guys, I need like longer than January to prepare.
Totally. Well, I think this one I tried to specialise in the emotional torture, and Katharine's tried really hard with the actual torture.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. It literally took me days to get over this.
That's really nice to hear, actually.
And I don't think I am over it really. It's an emotion-filled ride, and the characters will never leave me, nor will the heartbreak and the joy. So they're an incredible series.
Thank you.
I'm really glad.
Well, thanks for inviting us today. We've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and good luck with the UK YA week, because it's so brilliant to have support, because it's really hard, I think, for UK YA writers to get the same impact given like the massive budgets that all the US ones have. So
yeah, that was why I was so keen to do something that was kind of just UK authors, because I think with YA a lot now, there is a lot more momentum behind it, especially online. But I still think a lot of that is aimed at kind of the American titles. And I just wanted to create a little space for kind of like the UK ones, because there's some amazing authors and books that just don't get the same kind of press behind them. And they need to be read and enjoyed, and people need to join me in being emotionally tortured. So that I'm not the only one going through it. So we can start like a little support group for emotional roller coaster rides. But so hopefully a Throne of Swans support group is very much needed.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. We're glad you enjoyed the geology.
No, I really did. Like the main characters as well. I don't want to give too much away, but
I think the next one will be in the same sort of, give you the same sort of feels, hopefully.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get you an early copy as well.
Yes, please. I'll never say no to that. Well, I'm going to have to get a box of tissues and some chocolate, I think. But yeah, thank you for joining us.
It's been really nice to meet you as well, personally. Sort of meet you.
It's been really nice to chat to you, kind of face to face, rather than in chat boxes.
Yeah.
It's been really good, and I can't wait to hear about what's coming in January.
Great. Can't wait to tell you.
Thanks very much for having us, Charlie.